The first story of the day is about Google's CEO. His name is Sundar Pichai or Pichai. I'm sorry, I butchered your name, brother. He's from India. He's been out here for 20 years or so. He's been the Google CEO for 15 years. I listened to his intro speech and as much as I could. So he testified in front of the House Judiciary Committee. This is Google's CEO. It's been a long time coming for Google to talk to our politicians. Problem being is that, in my personal perspective, they didn't ask the right questions. But like I said, I didn't watch all 3 hours of it, so maybe they did and I missed it. So the big question on the Republican and conservative side is Google biased? We feel like Google is biased because, as people know, where Google's headquarters is, it's 80% Democrat. Even Mark Zuckerberg admitted that a lot of Facebook's employees are Democrat, and in certain ways, you can't help that. If you're in a liberal area and a lot of liberal people are into tech, you don't want to do what the feminists and the left wing does and try to make it 50-50 just to please everybody. To me, that's not true equality. Let it pan out as it is. But at the same time, I'm not talking about employees. I'm talking about the actual search engine. The question is it rigged? Is it politically rigged? Is it fair? Is it honest? Is it accurate? And is it working for the Democratic Party? I would say it is, and here's why, and here's what I heard almost no one say. So the key thing that I took from this is the CEO of Google said, it's unbiased, we have an algorithm. He said we have keywords, they're ranked on popularity or freshness, and then this part is the part that should stick out to everyone. He said, but then after we do like our normal algorithm, we evaluate them at external raters with objective guidelines. So when it comes to the algorithm, it's a certain code or formula that they put in. First of all, the algorithm itself can be rigged. You can put in certain keywords, and if you have a super liberal-minded person who forms the algorithm or a liberal team, the whole algorithm could be essentially rigged. I think it is. But the real reason that Google has gotten even more rigged than it already was over the last year is because, like he said, I'm going to repeat it, after that, we evaluate them at external raters with objective guidelines. That means that there's an external team, or a bunch of them I'm about to tell you, that rate what is hateful, what is unhelpful, what is offensive. These are the things that the external raters are looking for. There's 10,000 of them. So after it goes through Google's algorithm that I would argue is already rigged to begin with, and they don't talk about it, but they give it to raters, who put in these guidelines like Twitter does, hate speech, sexuality, offensive. It seems like if you're anti-Christian or anti-white, just being honest, that's not considered hate speech to liberals. But if you're anti-Islamic or anti-gay or anything, it is. In my personal opinion, it's not a true formula of hate and division and negativity and offensive and unhelpful content. It's a liberal's very skewed fake version of what equality is. So they have 10,000 raters who work around the clock to make sure that Google algorithms don't result in results that are unhelpful, offensive, unhelpful, offensive, or downright offensive. I don't know. I guess I wrote it twice. So I read a lot of articles about who these raters were, because I'm trying to figure out, okay, so you have this algorithm, and then you give it to people who are supposed to be objective, kind of like how Facebook and Twitter has the guidelines and we're going to fight fake news with Snopes and PolitiFact, and we're going to disprove everything you do. If the raters themselves don't have a level head, then it's not going to be accurate, and it's not. I read a bunch of articles about who the raters were. All of them led towards cracking down on conservatives and white people. And I'm not saying that certain white people aren't a problem. That's not what I'm saying. They said they're cracking down on the right wing and Holocaust denial. They said they're cracking down on white supremacy. They said they're cracking down on... And I'm not saying that that's not a problem as far as white supremacy and bad white people, but if you're truly trying to be objective, you have to filter out all hate. But hate is a very sensitive path, and they've already gone down it with these raters as well as all social medias. What do you consider hate? Because, to me, certain things are comedy, and they think it's hateful. Certain things to me are interesting. There's a lot of people that I don't agree with, whether it's right wing or left wing. Personally, I think it's intellectually dishonest to censor and silence one side of the debate and claim that you won the debate because that you can't find them on Google searches anymore. And I understand as a public company and someone for the people, you don't want the most hateful, negative things at the top. That's not what I'm saying. I get the idea and the thought behind it, like I do with a lot of liberal left-wing policies, but the execution of it is just not honest, and it is downright biased, because in their pursuit of cracking down on white supremacy and neo-Nazis, which in my personal perspective is fine as long as it's the most radical ones, here's the problem. I'm guessing these 10,000 raters that they use and Google and the 80 to 90% liberal tech company echo chamber bubble that they've built, they don't properly assess who's who. Like, it's not like, okay, these are left-wing fascists, these are right-wing supremacists, this is the middle ground. Their whole ideology is skewed. They think literally everyone is neo-Nazis and white supremacists. If you say, I'm proud to be white, you're a white supremacist. If you say, I'm proud to be black, you're a social justice hero and you get, a free job at Google over Asian people. If you say, I'm believe in low taxes and personal freedom and I love America, and you happen to be white, they call you a white nationalist, where you could be a black nationalist, a Hispanic nationalist, a French nationalist. There's nationalists all over the world. It's not exclusively to white people in America, and it's not just white people in America. It's a lot of races. But they use these terminologies and this false labeling that they themselves have created to label almost everybody a white supremacist, a neo-Nazi, or a far right-wing. Like, to me, people like Paul Joseph Watson, people like Gavin McInnes, honestly, people like, I don't know, even say like Joe Rogan, they're classic liberals. They're like what a liberal is. So, but in this weird, skewed tech company echo chamber, they think Gavin McInnes needs to be banned from all platforms because he's a white supremacist. Okay, I thought he was like a normal liberal conservative. And then they go down here, and then even Joe Rogan, who panders to the left wing all the time, they say that he's like a right-wing enabler because he's trying to have a discussion with both sides. You have Jonathan Pye in the UK, who is like non-PC. He curses a lot. He thinks liberals are being ridiculous because they are being ridiculous. They're ruining comedy. And he gets labeled all these bad terms, even though he's like a normal left-wing person. Tim Pool is another one. Tim Pool is a independent journalist who's like a super liberal, normal liberal, left-wing policy guy, but he knows that like the left wing's being weird and creepy and they don't care about even their own policies. What I'm saying is, so this is why Google is biased, and I didn't hear anybody in the House Judiciary Committee explain this. First of all, yes, the algorithm, they don't have humans rigging the searches, so that was a big point, and everyone just let them off the hook. Yes, once the algorithm's put in, it's not like they have millions of people just sitting and manually changing your searches. That's not what they do, and that's for some reason what these House members thought that they're doing. Yeah, once the algorithm's in, the algorithm is set. Hold on a second. It's set for the time being, but the algorithm can inherently be biased. If I code an algorithm and I say, talking about Trump is hate speech, border security is hate speech, anti-illegal immigration is hate speech, anti-UN migration pact is hate speech, high taxes is hate speech, talking about being white is hate speech, talking about being Christian is hate speech, anti-Islam is hate speech, anti-Judaism is hate speech, but anti-Christianity is not hate speech, anti-white people is not hate speech, anti-Republicans is not hate speech, like literal, like talking like negatively to like 2-year-olds and 5-year-olds like some people have done is not hate speech. That's how you rig an algorithm. And then you stand back and you say, no, we're not manually rigging Google. Like, what are you talking about? We don't have a bunch of people just kicking you off. We have the algorithm, but algorithms can be rigged. And I'm telling you, on YouTube, I'm going to get into it in a second, it is rigged. I'm not questioning if it's rigged. I don't need to raise my hand in front of the House and lie to everybody. And I get that there's a way to say it without maybe technically lying, but I'm here to let you know that they are lying. It is rigged. From the algorithm itself is inherently rigged because liberals nowadays, and not all of them, but the ones that run the tech company and the entertainment media, they're not starting from a level playing field. They think they're the saviors of humanity. They think everything that they do is good, and they think that if you oppose illegal immigration, like, just to be honest, everybody who works in law enforcement should, because that's their job, to abide the law of the United States. So if you follow the law, liberals think you're hateful. And like I say all the time, there's a debate to be had about legal immigration and illegal immigration. You can be pro-illegal immigration. And to me, I think it's a valid stance to defend. Like, if you want to feel a certain way, who am I to tell you not to? You can be pro-illegal immigration, but what liberals and tech company liberals are doing nowadays is they say, if you're anti-illegal immigration, which is what, like I said, every judge and every law enforcement should be, because that is their job. If they are pro-illegal immigration, they are literally not doing their job. So, of course, there's going to be people who want to have legal migration. That's like the way that the world works, mostly. At least for the last 100 years, they say that that's hateful. They will then code that's hateful. They will code anti-white supremacy, but then they'll say Breitbart's white supremacy, and they're not. They're conservative. They'll say Paul Joseph Watson and InfoWars and Gavin McInnes and Milo, even though Milo is a gay Jew who has a black boyfriend. They'll say he's racist and he's a white supremacist, although he gets attacked by literal Nazis because he's Jewish. Anyway, the whole algorithm is rigged to begin with, and nobody called Google out on it because they don't understand this. Now, not only is that algorithm rigged, so the whole coding is essentially probably rigged, now they give it over to 10,000 fact checkers. So when it's not a GPI, I'm sorry, that's the guy who works for Trump, Sundar Pichai, he says, no, we don't have people manually changing the searches. They actually kind of do, because they have 10,000 raters who then take the already rigged algorithm and then they add hate speech, unhelpful, or offensive content. But liberals are offended by the truth. Liberals are offended by criticism of Islam. Liberals are offended by criticism of themselves. Liberals are offended by criticism of illegal immigrants. And this is what offends them. To me, almost nothing offends me. So I don't care if it comes from the left or the right. I would say death threats towards like innocent people on all sides is unhelpful. You know, violence and like terrorism, these are the things that are offensive to me. So that's what I would filter, like criminals and people that are actively committing crimes and stuff. But to Google, they ignore, like, and I hate to really bring this up, but it's true on Twitter and on YouTube, and I could back this up with mainstream media evidence. This is not a theory. YouTube let pedophiles run rampant for years. Twitter still has pedophiles on its platform and racist people, because to them, pedophilia is not the big issue to them. The big issue is conservative values is offensive to them. So they're more offended by conservative values than they are pedophiles. That's why you had YouTube being a home of pedophilia for a year, 2-3 years, and they've had to put out a big report how there were millions of views and millions of subscribers that were like child grooming services. And Twitter has people proclaiming that they're non-violent, non-acting pedophiles on Twitter, but that's okay to them. Why? Because to them, when they have 10,000 people, when they hire them to crack down on hate speech, unhelpful, and offensive comment, most of their energy goes towards what they consider hateful, which is conservative values, anti-illegal immigration, pro-America, pro-flag, being proud of their culture, being proud of their freedoms. Like, literally, this is what American conservatives like. This is what they filter. So, is Google's algorithm biased? It is biased because the algorithm itself is biased. And then they hire 10,000 fact checkers who are only looking, and I'm not saying all of it completely, but I could guarantee you I have eyes and a brain. I've seen how Google has changed over the year, and it is getting ridiculously skewed. So when pjmedia.com, does a study and they find out when you search Trump, 95% or so, I think it was 92 or 95%, maybe 96, 94%, of searches for Trump led you to liberal news outlets that were hating on Trump. So that's a 94-95% skew. The CEO, Sundar, wants you to believe that the reason that this is 95 or 94% for liberals is because it's popular and it's fresh and it's past all the standards of what, you know, real authentic news is. But the truth is, lies are authenticity to them. They think the big lie is the truth. They think the truth is hateful and offensive. So they filter it out. They rig their algorithms. They have 10,000 external companies rigging their algorithms even further. And then they stand back and say, oh, no. This is fresh. It's popular. This is like Search Query 101. It's algorithm. It's based on all this stuff, but it's really not. They filter what is truly popular on YouTube and Google to rig and manipulate towards liberals. And all the Democrats were saying this isn't true, this is a hoax, this is a fake. It's not true. They're authoritarian, fascistic-minded people who want to weed you out so you're only 5%, and then they proclaim to the 95% crowd that they've built because they filtered you into a corner. They tell you that it's the other way around. They say, oh my God, we're being attacked. We're, the Time magazine cover, freedom of speech. Oh my God, it's a war on truth and a war on our journalists. And I'm not saying what happened there was right, but what I am saying is the real rigging is 95.5. They flip it and they get all of their people to attack the very small group of people. This is modern day book burning. This is total information manipulation. This is authoritarian tactics that have been used by the most nefarious psychologists in modern history, and they're doing it. So this is how Google is 1,000% rigged, and nobody was talking about it in the house. And YouTube is ridiculously rigged. YouTube is insanely rigged, and what's crazy is sites like me and Luke from We Are Change, he's more liberal, left-leaning, but libertarian kind of, we're still outperforming them. They rig everything against us, and they steal all our money. They rig their entire algorithms. They have fact-checkers who are dishonest, claim they're not doing anything, and we still outperform them. It's pathetic how bad everything they do backfires. They attack the NRA sales go up. They attack Trump wins. They do this in Europe, and Europe rebels. It's like nothing they do works, even though they have all the tech companies on their side. You think at a certain point they might be like, maybe we're doing something wrong, because everything we do backfires. Literally, every single thing that they try to do backfires in their face because they don't have truth on their side. They don't have honesty on their side. They don't have integrity and justice on their side. And that's what usually wins long term. And they're not winning. So on YouTube, how it's rigged. Excuse me. When you search for search results now, if you search yellow vests, you should find my videos that have hundreds of thousands of views. You should find Luke of We Are Change's videos. You should find independent people talking about it who have hundreds of thousands of views, because according to Google's algorithm, if they truly had an unfiltered algorithm, it's we have more likes, we have more comments, we have more shares, we have a better ratio. Like every aspect of how their algorithm should work, we're dominating in. But the thing is, here's what they do. They have the external people, and they've rigged YouTube to put Washington Post, Fox News, New York Times, Guardian, all of these mainstream media outlets at the top. It's not because they're more popular. It's not because they're more liked. It's not because they're less hateful. Me and Luke don't even talk about hate. So we're not getting flagged because of hate. YouTube is rigged. Within the last year, they've completely rigged the entire website to destroy independent content and hide it towards the second and third and fourth page, and put all the mainstream media outlets that are failing and can't get as many views as us because nobody trusts them. The left wing in America doesn't trust them. The progressive left and even the liberal left is now falling away from that, because even Elon Musk is on 60 Minutes telling them that they're lying. It's like all liberal heroes are getting crushed by liberals. Neil deGrasse is going down, Kevin Hart's going down, Elon Musk is going down. It's like you're self-sabotaging and wondering why you can't get views. And then instead of improving your content and trying to be more likable or more honest or more believable, they just kick me and Luke from We Are Change and other people who are documenting the Paris stuff down to the third and fourth page. But here's the kicker. Even after they rig everything, even after they take our money, even after they demonetize us, even after they have external fact checkers to put a little link at the bottom of our videos to tell you what they think instead of what we think, we still get more views. It's absolutely insane how much they're losing. And that's my question, is like, I can't complain on YouTube. I'm growing exponentially. I'm getting like hundreds of thousands of views a week now on YouTube. I'm getting I got 10,000 new subscribers this month. How many would I get if I actually came up in the search engines? Like, people can't even find me in the search engines, barely, and I'm still growing. Like, how fast would I grow if I got the same treatment of New York Times and Washington Post and CNN and MSNBC and even Fox News and New York Post, Rupert Murdoch's companies, who a year or two ago, Prince bin Talal Alaouid, or whatever his name was, from Saudi Arabia, had a huge stake in News Corp. So it's like, it's not just the left-wing media that's kind of been taken over. Even right-wing media has been taken over by some Saudi Arabian billionaires. And Twitter is now working hand in hand with the Pakistani government. They've recently punished someone in Canada, or told them, kind of threatened them, like, hey, don't do this even though you don't live in Pakistan, saying that they violated Pakistani laws even though they're from Canada. They did it to my favorite Imam Tawhidi of of Australia. He's an imam who's against radical Islamic terrorism. He believes in Reformation and his ideology, but he's not only been threatened, or I won't say threatened, but pressured by Twitter to not violate Pakistani laws, even though he's not Pakistani, he's from Iran. They've banned him now, I believe, on Facebook for 30 days for criticizing Islam. So do you see how Facebook and Twitter and YouTube works? They don't even like transgender people if transgender people go against the liberal agenda. They claim that they're standing against hate, but the second a transgender woman or man says something that's like libertarian, they get banned off Twitter. The second somebody who's Islamic says something that liberals don't like here in America, and trust me, you're not going to hear them on the forefront, but there are a lot of Muslim people. I won't say like 90% or anything, but there's, tens of thousands of Muslim people in the United States who are conservative because they've lived in Iran, they've lived in Pakistan, they came to America. They don't take every word for word from the Quran, or they have a different interpretation of it. I listen to Imam Tawhidi. He's the real deal. I've always liked his tweets, but honestly, I've been a little skeptical because he's so against radical Islam. I'm like, is he an operative for like the U.S. or Israel's government or something? Like, I've been very suspicious of him. I'm not gonna lie. But I watched an hour listening to him where he really explained his feelings, and he makes total sense. I'm a big fan of his now because he lived in Iran and he lived in Iraq, and his uncle was killed by ISIS. So that dropped the radicalization from him once his uncle was killed. And you have to understand that these radical Islamic terror groups, they don't just kill Christians. Like I believe they did, we'll find out what it was, but in Paris today and in Brazil, there were 2 attacks on Christmas malls. We'll see what happened, in cathedrals. But it's not just Christians that are being targeted by radical Islamic terror. It's actually a lot of Muslims too. A lot of Muslims are afraid, and a lot of Muslims get targeted. So that's why Imam Tawhidi gets that way. Why I'm going on this huge rant is because he's banned on Facebook. This is a very good Muslim guy, very pure, very honest, puts justice and his country of Australia first. He believes in his religion. He's trying to save his religion from radicalization or getting destroyed. And he's somebody who makes people less Islamophobic. Like when you see what Imam Tawhidi says and you see how he leads with justice, it makes Republicans and conservatives become more comfortable with Islam, actually. He's like a really great person if you want to get people more comfortable with Islam. And look how he gets treated on Facebook. He's not specifically hateful. He's raising awareness to the hate and the violence and the murder coming from his own religion, and he gets banned. This is liberal intolerance. This is what Google does. This is what Facebook does. This is what YouTube does. They don't care about the gay community or Islam. They care about their agenda, which is creepily partnering with the most radical elements of these religions. They're partnering with Pakistani's government to pressure Canadians and Australians, including imams, into not being blasphemous according to Pakistani's government. Like what Twitter and Google and Facebook is doing too, I guess with Imam. I try not to hate on Facebook that much because they're good to me, but what these tech companies are doing is insane. They are pressuring conservatives. They're supporting radical Islamic terror and anybody who speaks out against it. They hate Islamic people who don't agree with them. They censor transgenders who don't agree with them. They're like 1984 George Orwellian, where they rig their algorithms. They have fact checkers and external raters who then further rig the algorithms on YouTube. The entire algorithm is rigged to put mainstream media that nobody trusts at the top. You can't find people's videos. And people say to me, Anomaly, it's probably because they pay for that. So people think that News Corp and CNN and Time Warner and and MSNBC are paying for that priority on the searches. I have something very sad to tell you. They're not paying for that. They're actually getting paid for that. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. They're getting billions of dollars of free advertisements on Google, basically, with the algorithm rig, and they're not paying to do it. They're getting paid to do it. So they lie, they start wars, they divide people, they stoke racial tensions, they push radical terror and hate on anyone who speaks against it. They're very anti-certain religions. They're anti-entire Western civilization. And then they pay those news corporations. It's absolutely insane. Their idea was, we're going to fight fake news. We're going to take the stand against fake news and hate. So how are you going to do that? They partnered with the fakest news corporations, the mainstream media fake news, who have always, they've had people step down for lying, and they're super inaccurate to me. They give them top priority. They give them billions of dollars in free ads, and then give them tens of millions of dollars on top of that, because they claim giving tens of millions of dollars to teams that work with Fox News and teams that work with CNN and MSNBC and The Guardian, somehow that's going to make the news less fake. Like, this is insanity, and no one called Google CEO out on it, because to be honest, I don't think any of these people have a clue what's really going on. So hopefully this gives people a better understanding of how Google's algorithm works on YouTube and Google. Google owns YouTube. So they code the algorithm fake. They prioritize the fakest news organizations, which they claim are truth tellers. They give them tens of millions of dollars. They put them at the top, give them billions of dollars of free ads. They bury you, they censor you, they flip reality and then say it's the opposite. And then after all of that rigging, they hire 10,000 raiders who work around the clock to make sure that Google's algorithms aren't unhelpful or offensive, but what's unhelpful and offensive to them is actually what's extremely helpful and what's really not offensive. Or it is offensive and hateful, but only on that side. When you're offensive and hateful like CNN offends me and is hateful and unhelpful. I can't think of a more unhelpful news organization on the planet than CNN. They're unhelpful in Syria. They're unhelpful in the United States. They're unhelpful in the Middle East. They're unhelpful in Africa. They are a global news cabal that literally controls the minds and manipulations of every single country. They're the most widespread news organization on the planet. I can't think of a more unhelpful news organization than them. But they get top priority. They get millions of dollars. They get billions of dollars in free advertising and algorithm ranking. And then they censor and silence people who have a counter argument to them. So their idea of hate, before I move on, unhelpful and offensive, they're offended by the truth. I'm offended by the lie. I'm offended, to be honest, by really nothing. I would let it play out and let the winners win, but that's the thing. They don't want to admit Trump won. They don't want to admit that Canada's moving right-wing at a rapid rate. They don't want to admit France is having a revolution. They don't want to admit that UK, that there's millions of conservatives in UK that they try to black out and destroy their lives. They don't want to admit that Sweden moved right-wing for the first time in decades. They don't want to admit that Italy is done with their nonsense. They don't want to admit that Poland is not playing their UN migration pact games. They don't want to admit that Brazil is turning against political correctness and identity politics from the liberal left and weakness and foolishness and naivety. They don't want to admit that because they think controlling Google and Twitter and Facebook and blasting 10,000 articles about how cool they are and how cool it is to be weak and how everything that they think is so great, and if you disagree with them, you're a terrible person. They think that that's somehow going to change the perception of reality, and it's only strengthening the opposition. So I don't know how many people they plan to ban, rig, lie about, and stand in front of House Judiciary Committee and really avoid all these truths that I'm talking about. But as somebody who's been more left-leaning my whole life and has, always been deeper down the rabbit hole per se, but for me, I thought that liberals and progressives were going to be the ones to revolutionize the game. I knew that the two-party system was corrupt, but I didn't think it would come from the Republican side. And to be honest, there's still flaws on the Republican side, but the revolution does seem like it's coming through the right now, and it makes sense to me now. Lower taxes, more freedom, First and Second Amendment, very important. But overall, that's the story. Google CEO stands in front of House Judiciary Committee, says that there is no political bias. There is on Google, there is on YouTube. The algorithm is rigged, and then they have external raiders who then have a guideline that they don't actually follow. They only follow it for the right wing. They barely follow it for the left wing, and their whole guideline is skewed to begin with. So it's like skewed on top of 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 skewed, and then 95% of the search results are liberal, and then they step back and say, no. We don't sit over this and just look at it. It's the algorithm. It's not humans doing this. So it's absolutely dishonest, and it is what it is. Thank you for allowing me to be here to say my counter argument. The next story of the day is about Steph Curry, one of my favorite